All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Mindgasms. We got Tristram Johnson back here again, my friend from the UK, and Woke Centrist, aka Dusty Cubes, aka Dustin Cubit, is going to be here in a few minutes too, and we are going to have an interesting conversation about whether bad guys can be heroes and what is a hero. And we came up with a list here of morally gray protagonists and antagonists, and we're going to talk about what qualifies as a hero, and whether, like, how much it depends on what the characters do, for what reasons they do those things. And we came up with a list here of some characters. Let me see. I took a screenshot of this list here. There we go. Okay, so yeah, I'll just list them off here and we can go through them one by one. And so we're going to talk about, so we could talk about Gollum. Did we decide? No, we were going to go with Boromir next, because I had Sam written down, but he's not really morally gray. No. He's really righteous.
Yeah, Sam's a hero. He's just not what people might have thought as like an action
he's
hero.
Not like the traditional hero trope, right?
But he's not at all morally gray.
Yeah. So do you want to talk about him then, or?
Well, I just think one thing I think would be really good to hear just before we start, Andrew, is from your perspective, what are some essential characteristics that a hero or a primary protagonist, I guess, has to have? Because I think that's something that we're going to provide slightly different perspectives on as we talk from our previous discussions.
Yeah, that's what made me have the idea to have this discussion in the first place, actually. Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, to me, I think I would say that I probably have a pretty big category for what I would classify as a hero, really, because, like, especially, like, as we've talked about before, like some of the examples that we have that we're going to discuss, like Tyrion Lannister from Song of Ice and Fire / Game of Thrones, for example, or Logen Ninefingers from First Law. Also, they, like, some of those, especially Logen Ninefingers, are just like straight up bad guys, and it's like Tyrion Lannister, for example. He's honestly my favorite character in Song of Ice and Fire.
I think he's meant to be. I think he's clearly the author's favorite character, for like no question.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, so, like, I just think it's hard to say, because, like, I know we were talking about Gollum, and I was saying that Gollum, to me, it could be classified as a hero too, just because he does heroic acts, even though he does it for bad reasons, and he kind of, like, accidentally does them sometimes. Right. So I think, like, it depends on the character and the circumstances in terms of how much what they do matters in comparison to their motivations for it. Because this is an interesting conversation, which is why I wanted to talk about it, because it's very debatable, like where you draw the line, really. Like, obviously, one of the reasons that I say that Gollum is at least, like, he's a hero in some ways, is that, like, he's necessary for the ring to be destroyed and all that sort of thing. So I don't know, like, what's your answer to your question?
Well, I have a very distinct, and I think this is probably where some of our discussion will come from, is maybe that my view is a bit more narrow. I absolutely think you can have fantastic characters who are super important, that are corrupt, evil, and downright bad. Morally grey can be far more interesting than a white knight, but I do think that the definition of hero implies more than just protagonist and more than just like accidentally useful to the plot. I think they do have to take proactive action. I think that's vital. I do think it needs to be deliberate to some extent. You can be an accidental hero and still take deliberate action. And there's lots of characters like that who, like Percy Jackson in Percy Jackson Lightning Thief, he doesn't mean to get involved in adventure, but he does, and then becomes the hero by his actions. So I think direct, positive, proactive action that is unforced by others. And secondly, I do think for me to have the moniker hero, those actions have to have some level of selflessness or be good in and of themselves. That means the motivation needs to be to some level good, and the actual outcomes need to be somewhat what I would consider morally good. In other words, to help the majority. I do believe that you can have absolutely dark characters who will do heroic things. And so as we discuss, that's kind of the criteria I'm going to be holding these people against is, do they deliberately act like take control, or are they merely forced into actions that occasionally end up with good results? Because I don't think that makes you a hero. I think you need to actually proactively choose to. Maybe not all the time, but there has to be some agency in the character, and some of that agency at least has to be used for good acts. For me, that's how I would define it.
Okay, so
awesome characters, anything goes.
All right. So yeah, let's I want to just go through the list here. Not get into discussing them until Dusty gets here.
Just reel it off.
Like to try to figure out where you would draw the line, I guess, because I'm not so sure where I would draw the line, like between what makes someone a hero or what makes someone a villain or what makes someone somewhere in between. So be interested to just briefly say, like, okay, so like we kind of went through Gollum a little bit in terms of that, like,
so like I don't think Gollum's a hero. Right?
Yes,
Gollum's a great character. I don't think he's a hero. And again, I'm sure we're going to get into that discussion because that's a really important one. But so that's an example. And again, it's because I believe that though Gollum has a couple, and I would say a couple, less than 5 really heroic acts, or acts that are really useful to the plot, I think that almost all of them he does either accidentally or because he's forced by others, not because he's a hero, though he does do things that save the world. That's for sure. And without him, the story doesn't work. He is one of the most interesting characters in all of the books, because even though the books have cool characters, and like I love Gimli and Legolas and Aragorn, Gollum is more interesting than all of them. He has far more actual interaction. So yeah, I absolutely agree with you there, but not in that I know you absolutely see that differently.
Yeah. Well, I made a video about how not just Sam, which we agree about, but also Sam. Gollum are the most important characters in Lord of the Rings.
And I agree with that.
And also the most important, not only that, but I also said that they're both heroes. So, like,
and that's where we differ.
I think that and I guess we should wait till Dusty gets here to get more into that.
Yeah, go on.
Actually,
let's go through the list.
Yeah. So the next one here is Boromir. So that's it. He's a really interesting one too, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, what are your thoughts on Boromir?
Boromir is far less important than Gollum. Far less important. But I find Boromir more heroic. Now, I think Boromir is a really good example because for most of the book, he is not heroic. Okay? Or most of his actions are not. I think what Boromir does is he goes through a redemptive cycle. But I think Boromir had a level of honor in the first place, and his villainy is primarily prompted by something that has heroism at its root. His villainy is prompted by his dedication to his homeland. He believes that it is to do for the greater good that he will do the wickedness that he plans, and he does, try to murder Frodo to take the ring, which is horrific because Frodo cannot possibly defend himself against Boromir. That's made very clear. Like if Boromir actually fights him, he's dead, and so it's a bit almost like child murder. But the thing is that Boromir, when he overcomes his madness, you can see that is a momentary weakness, which actually makes him really human and relatable. In a way, more relatable than Aragorn. Just throwing that out there.
I would say so. Yeah, I agree.
Aragorn in the book is quite one note. It's one of the reasons that in the films, Jackson specifically made Aragorn more troubled in order to make him more interesting and relatable. And it was a good choice for the film. It was a good choice.
Yeah. I also like one of the changes that Peter Jackson made for the movie, in that in the Lord of the Rings books, they don't really show like this epic battle sequence with Boromir's death, right? They kind of skip to his death.
Find him afterwards.
I like how they made his death all fucking epic, and he dies with like 3 arrows in him in the movie.
Come on, kind of thing. Like, yeah, absolutely. And like again, something that's maybe for a very narrow segment of the audience. There was a cartoon version of Lord of the Rings that was tried. It didn't do particularly well, so they never finished it. So it ends at Helm's Deep, and they also showed the Boromir action sequence, and I loved that. I freaking loved it. It was like,
is that the one from the 70s?
Yeah, I don't know if it's in the 70s. I think the 80s. Like
80s?
It's the one with the weird animation.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Boromir has like this knot short. He wears like a Viking helmet, and when like Merry and Pippin are being like swarmed by the orcs, he just runs in behind him. He's like bang, just slicing pieces. Freaking amazing.
Yeah.
But no, I agree. And so that's why I think that Boromir can count as a hero, a flawed one, one who falls and then redeems himself. But most of Boromir's actions, I believe, even the flawed ones, are motivated by a consistent ethic. Whether or not you agree with that ethic is another matter.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I find him more heroic than Gollum, but far less important than Gollum and far less interesting than Gollum. And so that's how I would see it differently.
Yeah, I would say I agree with you about Boromir pretty much. Yeah, I would say like he's less important. He's far less important for the plot, and he's less of an interesting character than Gollum. But he is more heroic. Like he has a more strict moral code, but at the same time, most of his actions are morally gray or kind of immoral because he's basically trying to get the ring. But like you said, he does have positive motivations for that. He's not motivated by malice like Gollum is a lot. And then he ultimately ends up redeeming himself. Yes. And like we were just saying, he does it in like a so much more dramatic way in the movie.
It's totally badass.
Yeah, it's
totally
awesome.
Badass.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's just briefly go over the next one here. Yeah. So I alluded to this one of these ones earlier. So this is Logen Ninefingers. Yes, from the First Law trilogy. This is the epitome of moral grayness, and like literally a bad guy can a bad guy be a hero?
Well, I'll say this for Logen Ninefingers. He is bad. He is like, the thing is, but he's like kind of possessed by a demon, you know? So
like when he goes into berserker mode, right? Especially.
I mean, one of the things about First Law is that there is like deep magic in First Law, but for most of the time, like 95% of the books, it's just not present. Okay. Which is really, really well done because it really lends a realism to it. And you can kind of almost believe that there's this sort of almost mythological nature to the magic. And the magic is not a hard system. It's a very soft system. Like what it's truly capable of, what bites can do and stuff is unclear. But it is clear and it is repeated that it isn't just an idea. It's not just his anger or his temper. He has a demon, right? Like an actual, the Bloody Nine is more than just a person with a bad temper. So I don't know if Logen counts as a hero in my view. However, he does do outright heroic acts. And even though there is great pressure on him, we see him several times, especially in the early books, do things deliberately for good reasons, like how he preserves his companions. He does quite selflessly. And in some ways, the books to me are almost a story about how he could have been a hero, how he was this close, and just a few things, because in First Law, everything goes wrong. If you've not read the books, I don't want to spoil them for you guys who are listening, but like everything that can possibly goes wrong. It's excruciating, it's painful. And so I think Logen is very close, but in my opinion, in the end, too much of what he does, and it's pragmatic, right? It's pragmatic. I don't think he's a villain, okay? I don't think he's a villain. I don't think he's a sadist. I don't think he's an evil overlord. I think he's just a demon possessing a guy who's trying to do the right thing and then can't, and gives in to what he is. Essentially, but he's super complicated. I think you could make a genuine argument that he is a hero, but for me, too much of what he does is either selfish, forced, or just undone by some of his. In a way, he's a reverse Boromir. Like when I'm reading the book, it's like this guy's clearly the hero, and I'm like, did he just do that? Oh my goodness. And like, I thought like Glokta was going to be redeemable, and then at the end, I'm like, actually, well, anyway, we'll get to Glokta.
Yeah,
but yeah,
no, that's interesting. Yeah, I would say like just to be controversial again, also I just like because you're going from the perspective of Logen Ninefingers in the original First Law trilogy.
Oh no.
Yeah, he went there.
Oh, is he gone? So we're still here.
Yeah, we're still here. I just don't see Andrew.
Oh man.
He froze.
And he's the host, so this could be fun. And he was just about to lay some knowledge on us as well. Hey, so just while we're waiting for Andrew to get back, from your point of view, how do you define like what you would consider a hero, just while we're waiting for Andrew to return?
Someone who sacrifices their own self for others.
Okay.
And there could be heroic moments that define a person as a hero. It doesn't necessarily have to be that's like the first choice that they make every single time.
Absolutely not. Yep.
Yeah. So someone could be like a hero in a moment. Some people can be like chronic heroes, but
absolutely.
But I do think there's kind of like in order to be branded the hero of a specific story, you just kind of have to weigh out.
Andrew's back.
Their sacrifice.
I guess I lost my internet connection there, guys. Sorry.
So when you guys are talking about Logen, are you specifically just doing like the First Law trilogy version of Logen?
Wait, you haven't read the standalones, right? Right, Tristram? The First Law standalones?
I haven't, but you could, without plot breaking, you could talk to me about Logen as a character. You guys just discuss. Dusty, talk all about it. Just don't tell me.
Well, I would say Logan's whole story is in the standalones. He's coming to terms with his former self, and he's trying to make amends for that. So I think if you totally just kind of think about Logen as a character throughout all the books that he's written in, he's not like his story that was left in the first trilogy, yeah, he's definitely extremely gray. But as he progresses in the standalones, it seems he is genuinely trying to redeem himself from that monster identity that he had in the past.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool. And,
It's
and
no,
the
like
thing
how
is,
I'm
much
not going to say any more than that.
Yeah,
We
we shouldn't say any more than that. Yeah.
Story.
no, but that's cool because
Whether he's successful in doing that, that's another
Unsure.
story.
That's kind of what I was just gonna say. Like, think about some of the parts in Red Country, right?
Yeah, whether he's successful,
I was gonna say,
know.
I was saying too before I lost my internet connection there, like to me, like because the First Law trilogy takes place from the point of Logen Ninefingers, and like this is a world where kind of like almost everyone is a bad guy. It's like bad guys versus worse guys. So he's like the better end of the spectrum of bad guys. So that's why, like, within the universe of the First Law trilogy, I do consider him to be a hero, even though in a lot of other series, especially fantasy series that are not grimdark, like even Wheel of Time, perhaps he might be actually a villain. So, like, I think it depends on the series that you're talking about too.
Like, so,
and we
like
could
the
also
line
think like I would say pre First Law. From everybody that describes Logan, they definitely would call him a villain.
Yeah, like
so this is when he was on the side
You
of
could
Death
definitely
Odd.
say that the First Law trilogy is like a grimdark fantasy series from the perspective of the villains too. You could definitely say that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And the thing is, that's one of the reasons why it's such an amazing series, though, right? Is that like that was like I've read a lot of fantasy, but one of the things about those, and I guess that's one of the things that makes it so interesting, is who is the freaking hero here? Like everyone I think is going to be heroic isn't like heroic, and like I've right now his name escapes me. The duelist. I want to say, frick.
I don't remember his name
The one who
either.
becomes king, you know what I'm talking about. And I'm like, maybe he's the guy. Maybe he's going to be the guy. And then he's like super selfish. And I'm like, oh no. And like, maybe the girl. And I'm like, oh no. And then I'm like, maybe it's like the dog
his name
man.
is Giselle.
Yeah. And
that guy. Yeah.
And for a while, you know, the girl he's into, and then it's like her brother who goes off to war. I'm like, oh, he's going to be the really. I'm like, oh no. They're all freaking evil. But the point is, I think one of the things that Joe's saying, which actually is quite realistic, is that a lot of the heroes we have in our own world are not just straight up clean heroes. If you come through a war and you're a war hero, you won't have clean hands. There's no way. But you can still make a decent choice in a horrible situation. And in the end, maybe it's a balance. Maybe there is no such thing as 100% clean. There's no Superman. There's levels. And I do believe that you can make hard and nasty choices, but overall be trying to do the right thing. And I think Logan's story is so good because even in just First Law, you get that feeling that he does genuinely kind of want to be a good person. It's just life doesn't work out this way.
Yeah.
It's almost like the beginning of First Law. He has given up and just has no motivation to do anything.
Because why
he's just going with the flow at that time. Because I know when he meets up with Baez,
now that guy.
There's kind of this question. Well, there's kind of this question, like, why are you doing what you're doing? Because he has basically just, at that point, is just going with the flow of things, and he's not really questioning anything.
Yeah. So who's next?
All right. Actually, before we go on,
Dusty's here now.
Before you got here, we had started talking about Gollum and Boromir. So we should get your thoughts on those two characters before we move on.
Well, book Boromir is probably a bit more noble than movie Boromir.
Yeah, we were talking about the differences before too, like how his death in the movies is so much more tragic and awesome than in the book.
Yeah, because I know in book Boromir, he debated more with himself about taking the ring. It seems like movie Boromir just straight up like wanted the ring. He didn't really debate too much about the morality of doing that.
Yeah, that's a good point.
He didn't have as long. It's only 3 hours here, guys. I've got to move to my climax.
Yeah, so I guess the thing about Boromir is you have this external force that's acting on him, which I guess from what we learned, what we learned is that humans basically have the hardest time dealing with the One Ring.
Yep.
So I don't kind of fault him, Book Boromir too much, because he tries to moralize what he does, and he just can't resist the temptation.
Mm-hmm.
But no human can really. So
yeah.
That's one of the we didn't talk about this when we were discussing Gollum earlier, Tristram. So it would be interesting to get into this in general, but that's like one of the reasons that I think you could classify Gollum as a hero, because he tries to do the right thing. Like he has almost this redeeming moment. Like he has this attempt at a redeeming moment, much more so in the movies, as we were talking about, than in the books, that where he like decides to actually try to redeem himself and try to be loyal to Frodo, and he tries to do the right thing. But then like it doesn't mean, like I was saying when we were talking about this before, it doesn't mean that he gets full credit and he should be excused for doing bad things and trying to fucking kill Frodo later on the slopes of Mount Doom. But it is like, especially in the movie, Frodo betraying him that led to him like deciding to not try to redeem himself.
And I agree that the movie makes Gollum much more sympathetic, his whole split personality and all this jazz. And again, I think Jackson did an amazing thing with the movies. He changed it, but he changed it in a sensible way to have a very powerful impact. At some point, we should talk about the travesty of the Hobbit movies, but no. But
actually, Andrew likes the Hobbit movies.
Don't get
I like the extended ones, because they have all this extra stuff that's actually really interesting. Like especially even in the third one, they add like 20 minutes to the epic battle sequence.
But the thing is, I'll tell you why. Even with that consideration, Andrew, like for me, on balance, it's not good enough. But the thing is, I agree completely that he cannot be expected to live beyond the ring. I don't think Gollum's fall is unacceptable. I think it's real. I think if I'd been Gollum, I'd have fallen too, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. 100%. The ring would have taken me over just like anybody else. Frodo was practically inhuman to get where he did. And it's like one of the whole points is that childlikeness protected him. But But the things
that's why he's a sympathetic character, because everyone is corrupted by the ring, right?
Correct. And even the most powerful, like Galadriel and Gandalf, they're like saying we'd fall if we messed with the ring.
Yeah.
But having said that, I don't think that makes him heroic. I think it makes him sympathetic. I don't think he's worse than anybody else. I think he's the same as everybody else. But I think a hero has to be more than everybody else. That's why I think you can argue Frodo's a hero. It's why I think you can argue Sam's a hero. I think it's why you can argue Gandalf's a hero, because he said, I know that's too much for me and I won't touch it. The thing I really accuse Gollum of, j'accuse, is him killing Deagle in the first place. Him killing his cousin to steal the ring because he wanted it before he'd ever worn it. So just that pull. And we see many other people turn that down. Lots.
That's true.
And so I don't like that. Also, then once he had it, he was in its power. And I agree. And I pity him. I don't hate Gollum. Gollum is vital. And Gollum is us in many ways. I think Frodo's a little bit too noble to be us. Like, I don't think we are Frodo. I think we're Gollum in the story. And that's how we're on the edge of the thing. And we realize that we've been corrupted by the bad choices we've made. And we could be redeemed if only we'd shun whatever it is that's the bad thing in our life. And it's a tragic story. But one of the things, as you say, is that it shows that in the end, Gollum was able to destroy the thing that was hurting him. He did it by accident.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I think it's there.
Yeah.
So should we start calling Frodo Ninefingers?
Frodo Ninefingers.
Say this for Frodo Ninefingers, he has hairy feet.
But I think in in the Rankin Bass movies, there's a song where there's a lyric where they say Frodo Ninefingers or something of that
Oh, really?
nature.
Really?
If I'm not mistaken. Well, if you
brought those movies up earlier before you got here.
The Rankin Bass one, yeah, I think the Return of the Ring. There's a song, and the Return of the King, where they sing about Frodo, and they say like Frodo with the 9 fingers.
Okay.
Like after that happens, but yeah.
That's awesome. So, like, what are your thoughts in general about Gollum, Dusty?
I don't see that he actually sacrifices himself for the good of others. He accidentally did it, but he didn't do that as an actual motivation to protect anybody. So I can't say that he's a hero. I think that's one of the things that you have to do. Like, whenever we think of heroes in modern society, we think of people who have sacrificed themselves, a cop protecting a civilian and dying in the line of duty, or, something like that. It seems like Gollum, for most of the time, I did not see him sacrifice himself in order to protect somebody just to do it.
Agreed.
I think if he did do it, and I remember there are parts where he helps them, but I don't think his motivation is to serve the people that he's helping. It's more about him getting something in return for that.
Okay, this is interesting. I think this is where you and Tristram agree more than I do, because to me, I don't think you necessarily have to be a morally good person with good motivations to be a hero. Like I said, for example, I kind of still consider Logen Ninefingers to be a hero, even though he's not a hero in anywhere close to like Luke Skywalker or someone like that.
Or Sam Gamgee.
Yeah, or especially Sam Gamgee, even more so than Luke Skywalker if we take into account all the Star Wars movies.
Absolutely.
But
I still think Logan's a hero, though. So
yeah, because Logan does have some moments where he's genuinely trying to help other people out. Like, there are moments like that.
Yeah, that's true.
Where he is like with his friendship with the dog man and stuff like that, and his crew. There is a loyalty there.
Yeah, and even in book two, he develops like a really awkward sexual relationship with that assassin woman. So he does have the ability to care somewhat.
Well, there's a lot of awkward sexual relationships in the trilogy.
Yeah,
I think every single sexual relationship in the trilogy is awkward.
Yeah. I think that Joe Abercrombie understands that these wonderful, fantastic sexual relationships that all people have in these movies isn't actually very relevant to many of us.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
I recall dating being quite awkward, and I just think I don't know. For me, that works because again, I feel it just makes everything about him. Joe's stuff. Like feel really realistic.
Yeah,
really realistic.
Yeah, like I like the way he does violence. I appreciate that realistic aspect of it too. Ooh. Like it's not always like you cleanly sever someone's head or you chop their arm off. It's like sometimes, oh shit, my axe got stuck in their rib. I need to pull it out so I can kill this next guy.
or you slit a guy's throat and it takes him like 2 minutes from the die.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is why I love him, but I just cannot read that guy again and again and again. I need a gap to recover. I'm just not dark enough for Joe, really. But he's such a good writer that
Yeah, he is.
once I start reading it, I can't put it down. But afterwards, I kind of feel like I might need to take a bath, because it's just I live quite a sheltered little life, my own personal life. And so even though I appreciate the master at work, and he is the master of grimdark in my view, I have to give myself a gap and go and read something nice and upbeat and yay, David Eddings, let's go on a quest.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to live in Logen Ninefingers' world at all, for sure. That'd be awful.
Horrible. Anyway, carry on. We've got to. Otherwise, we'll never go.
I brought up Logen Ninefingers in relation to Gollum because I think that even though I agree with you guys that Logen Ninefingers is actually a little bit more morally redeemable than Gollum, I still kind of classify Gollum as a hero because I don't think like I said, I don't think you necessarily have to have positive motivations to be a hero. I think the fact that he accidentally destroyed the ring makes him a hero in a way, because the ultimate goal of the quest of defeating the Dark Lord Sauron by destroying the ring, Frodo fails to do it, and he wouldn't have done it without Gollum, even though he admittedly accidentally did so. Him destroying the ring, because like we were talking about a little bit, like I don't think he would have willingly done it, and I really don't think that Sam would have like pushed him into the volcano.
No, Sam wouldn't have killed him.
At that point, Frodo, I don't know if he was so far gone that he might have killed Sam if he tried to take the ring from him. So that's why it's so interesting to talk about this, right?
It's true that he falls. I would
say that the problem I have with that definition is it simply boils what a hero is down to, can you complete a task or not? And if that's the case, then anyone could be a hero for any reason.
I wouldn't say it's exactly that simple. I would say it depends. Like I was saying with Logen Ninefingers, it depends on the world, and for me, it depends on the character, like how much you value what task they accomplished versus what their motivations are. So to me, like with Gollum, the fact that he is the one who destroys the ring, which is the ultimate goal, outweighs the fact that he does it accidentally with bad intentions. If it were something way smaller, I wouldn't think it even mattered at all. It's just the sheer scale of him destroying the ring that makes me think that.
And that's why this conversation is interesting, is because we have different definitions. Like I said, I think Gollum is probably one of the top 3 most important characters in the books. And he's also one of the top 3 most interesting characters in the books. I just don't think what he does is heroic. Vital, yes. Protagonist, yes. Heroic, no. But it's cool that we disagree. Otherwise, this would be a boring conversation.
Yeah.
And I do agree with you that at the end, Frodo does fail. He does say the ring is mine and turns away. And I do agree that there's no way Sam would have killed him, even if it was the right thing to do. No way. Sam's a great guy, but he couldn't have made that decision. He wouldn't have made that decision. It's completely against his character to make that decision. And so Gollum being willing to kill Frodo, being willing to bite his finger off to get the ring, is what leads to Sauron's defeat. That's for sure. But I just don't think that's heroic. I think that's attempted murder.
Yeah. I think attempted murder can be heroic.
James Bond would agree. James Bond would agree.
Like my mom just said off screen, I'm sick and twisted.
Anyway, we should probably move on. Otherwise, we're not going to get anywhere.
Let's move on to the next character that we were going to discuss here. Okay, so, from First Law.
Yeah, here we go. Now, there we go. Dusty, what do you say? Glokta.
Well, I'm just trying to think if he ever does any thing for anybody that
Well,
isn't self-serving, and I
what
can't
about
really think of any
what about
good
his
examples
what about his
except when
preservation
he's
of the
his
city?
what?
What about his defense of the city under siege?
Well, that was his job. So
True.
that was his job, and he delegated a lot of that task to somebody else. And he just kind of left it and didn't really care about what happened to it after he was told, "Oh, we knew you weren't going to win anyway." He didn't really care. He didn't care really at all about the state of the city after he left. I don't think he cared either way what happened. I think the only thing he really cared about was completing a task that was given to him. And he's quite ambitious. He wants to move up in ranks. And when he got moved to that city, he got a promotion. So I don't know. I couldn't say that particular scenario makes him a hero because one, he failed, and two, I don't think his motivation for that was self-sacrificing, because he really didn't put himself on the line for that, unless you considered all the money he borrowed. But yeah, for that I can't say. He'll have a little bit smaller moments that may show like more of his lighter side, like when he was concerned about what was her name? Is her name Ari, or what's the girl's name?
I forget.
Wes' sister.
Is that Artie?
Yeah, so he had like concerns about her health, but then again, we're like, are these based off of sexual fancies, or was he like actually concerned about her well-being? But I actually don't think it was that sexual, because he knew that she had a relationship with Giselle, or whatever his name was. And he seemed like genuinely concerned about her, because I think he actually admired West, right? Because he was a decent fencer and he actually cared about it, as opposed to Giselle, who just kind of did it because he thought he'd get some type of fame. Because we saw in the very beginning of the book, he didn't give a crap about dueling, and he wanted to quit.
Yeah. But Glokta does help him nonetheless.
Yeah, he does help him. But yeah, Glokta, he's just kind of a schemy guy. He doesn't really put his life on the line. He puts others' lives on the line. I can't see him. He's not really, I guess, a hero, so to speak.
Yeah. Actually, I would agree with you about Glokta, because, like I said, to me, the reason for that is that, like I said, it depends on the universe that we're talking about. So within the First Law universe, it seems to me anyway that Glokta is set up to be like the villain or the antagonist, or at least one of the antagonists. And let's not forget, his profession is torturer. So it's hard to be a good guy when you're a torturer, I would say.
Yeah, but torturing is his job as well. And
yeah,
we got to remember, he gave that girl a break because he was ordered to torture that woman in the second book.
Yeah.
And he actually had a heart and he couldn't do it.
He gives her a way out. But then in the end, that comes to bite him on the ass. Anytime Glokta shows even the modicum of his level of compassion, which, to be fair, is the same level of compassion of a cockroach, right? But when he shows even that level of compassion, the First Law universe just goes, "You shouldn't have done that."
Yeah.
So and Joe Abercrombie does such a good job of establishing this that from the very after the first book, anytime Glokta did anything nice to anybody, I'm like, that's gonna burn later. Oh, that's gonna burn later, and it always does. I'm just like, there is nobody in this world deserving of like even your minutest kindness, Glokta. You're cynical. He is so cynical, and he's such a pity party. But he has in a way, it's weird, right? Because he's so self-pitying, but he's right to be, because his life does genuinely suck.
Yeah.
And he's like, I wish I could get out of this, but there's no way I can. And he's right. He can't stop doing his job. If he does his job well, he's horrible. If he does his job poorly, he gets killed. Even going up the stairs is just agony. Like there's like one chapter where it's like half the chapter is him walking up the stairs.
Yeah.
And you're just like,
yeah, that's it. That's one of the things that makes him such a great character.
Yeah.
He's like a bad guy and he's a torturer, but he's also disabled. And like Joe Abercrombie mentions that a lot. So you have sympathy for him for that reason. That's why he's such a complex and interesting character.
And you have to remember too, he's always paranoid about his superiors wanting to kill him.
Yes.
And they are trying to. He's paranoid with a reason, because they're freaking evil.
Well,
yeah.
The guy that is his immediate superior actually wasn't trying to kill him, if I'm not mistaken, but he always thought he was trying to kill him. So whenever like he completed a task and he got called back, or failed a task and got called back, anytime there was a meeting, he basically thought that was going to be his last meeting and he was going to be killed for failing. But it's funny because every time he failed, he went into that office and, oh no, you're on the right path here.
It's like, we want you to. But like, one of the things that caught me out about Glokta is that basically every possible thing that could have redeemed him, like when he was the duelist, it goes wrong and he gets captured and smashed to pieces. And then like he has these allies who work with him. And of course, I thought, well, one of them's a traitor. And then they're both traitors. And then you're like, he's in that town. He's trying to save the town from itself. And he's the only one coming out with good ideas. And you're like, one of this group is betraying you. And they're all betraying you. Not just one of them, all of them. And you're just like, oh my goodness. Someone give this guy a break. Someone,
both of his practicals end up betraying him.
And I was sure one of them was. I thought Joe was like trying to get us to guess which is the spy, right? If it was a Brandon Sanderson book, it would have been like, guess who the spy is, work out the clever subterfuge. And then
and the funny thing is the most likely practical that would have been the spy ends up being like his best asset. The lady with the red hair. I forget her name.
Yeah, but we know who you mean.
Yeah. But she ends up like being his best practical. And they actually seem to have the most personal relationship, because he doesn't really have a great relationship between Frost and the other guy.
I don't know if you can have a good relationship with Frost. Do you think Frost has a good relationship with himself? I mean, that guy is like...
Well, yeah, he just mumbles all the time, but
he is like a freaky character. That guy is like genuine Stephen King fuel.
He's basically like a super yoked up, like Dan Brown villain.
Sorry. Go on, Disty. Sorry.
Yeah, I was just saying, like the red-haired lady. They actually got into conversations about things as opposed to his other practicals. So I guess that kind of was like a foreshadowing that she wasn't going to be the one. But
I like that being the threshold of goodness. They actually had conversations.
Yeah.
Just my word on Glokta is he is, I think, the most interesting character in the entire First Law trilogy. I think he is the most interesting. I think he is the character who most hooked me. I think he is the most vital to the result of what actually occurs, even though a lot of what he does seems to be behind the scenes, especially in the first book. But I believe that he is the kingmaker. He is the one. He is. He's the protagonist.
Interesting thing about him,
but he's not a hero,
is that he is the biggest thorn in the side for Baez.
Yeah,
and Baez is basically the main villain,
which I did not see. Okay.
No, I didn't see that either.
I was going to say, if you guys saw that, credits to you. Because I was, I've been brought up on the rest of fantasy, And then Joe Abercrombie's like, allow me to screw you over. And,
Yeah, I saw
did not see that
inklings
coming.
of it when he was doing the whole manipulation deal with Giselle, and
Yeah.
then when you started to hear his other
Stories.
buddy who's questioning him about how was it like how that event played out where someone got
Yeah.
tossed over a balcony.
Yeah.
And when he started to question him about that, I was like, oh, this guy is something's going on with this guy.
Yeah.
That's not good.
by book 3, I began to realize that basically everyone was evil. But I
It
thought
took
that
you until book 3 to realize that.
well, because I thought that like Giselle and like West were like, and the Dogman for sure were like proper good guys. And I thought I was on a Logen Ninefingers redemption arc the whole way. And I thought that Bayat was meant to be like a hard, grim Gandalf. Like I thought he was meant to be like, I thought he was meant to be like super gritty and like mean, but because actually we're going to get through this by playing hard against the enemy. You know, like George Patton versus Hitler. Like I'm pretty harsh, but only because I'm taking down the real bad guy. And so I thought that was what Bayat's story was going to be. Was like I'm prepared to use all the weapons in order to save the world. And then, my goodness, did I get that thrown in my face? The
Gurkish though are still pretty damn bad. You know,
well, they're all bad. Like
it's
I don't want to live
slavery
there.
culture, and their higher ups eat people to get powerful.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, he's super bad, but like so's like everybody, and
Yeah.
that's why, like when Andrew says his point, which is for that world, Glokta and Logan maybe are heroes.
Yeah,
But
you
not
know
in
what?
my
It might be
I would
true.
say in that world, Logan is a hero, but Glokta is a villain. I would say.
Oh, interesting. I don't think Glokta's worse than Logan.
No, I think Glokta is just a guy trying to do his job. I don't necessarily think he's evil, and I think he's just in the gears. He's being manipulated by higher ups to do what they need him to do. Especially gets manipulated by Baez almost the entire time.
But he's manipulating everyone. Let's be clear, like literally everyone. Logan is getting completely manipulated by him.
Yeah.
But I think Bayat has a lot of excuses. I think Glokta. Glokta has the most excuses of any character I've ever read. Like he's in Gollum level of excuses, in my view. Like I know it's not like a magical ring, but his life has been so rubbish. I understand why he's ended up looking out only for number 1. So I don't hate him. I'm intrigued by him. I root for him. I want him to win, even though he's nasty, but he's not a hero.
Yeah, because the only time I did not want Glokta to succeed was when the whole entire party got to the main city and he was actively working against Logan and his group. But this is before we knew how bad Baez was. But then again, like at that time, I was like, oh man, I don't want Glokta to get involved in this stuff because he's just messing things up for Logan's crew.
But Abercrombie knows that. He's like, I'm going to twist the knife because the more anguish you're in, the more you will read this. Anyway, we need to carry on. But I'm sorry, do you think they're heroes? Do you think Glokta's a hero? No, you said no, villain. So we agree that Glokta.
I don't think he's a villain, but I don't think he's a hero.
We all agree he's not a hero. Moving on.
We agree in this universe. All right, let's move on to the next character here. All right, so Tyrion Lannister.
Now here we go.
This is my like I like him even more than Logen Ninefingers. He's my favorite grimdark fantasy character. I love how like you have sympathy for him because he's a dwarf and because he's in the universe of A Song of Ice and Fire / Game of Thrones, where it's similar to First Law in that there are redeemable heroic characters in A Song of Ice and Fire / Game of Thrones, but he's like one of the morally gray ones. He's sort of in the middle. He's like I consider Tyrion to be a hero because he does have some character development, and he ultimately ends up doing things from good motivations, like you were talking about. What is one of your qualifications of a hero?
100%.
Throughout several of the books, at least. And he does do things for, like, he does manipulate people for his own ends, but often he's trying to manipulate his sister Cersei, for example, to try to, like, prevent her from doing the fucked up shit that she's trying to do.
Is that a technical term?
Yeah.
Dusty?
Well, Tyrion is my favorite character from that series, so
he's great. We agree.
I actually consider him to be the hero of that series.
Absolutely.
He has so much working against him, but he's also in a position where he can potentially have a lot of power. But whenever you observe him, like, he's always trying to prove himself. So he tries to prove himself intellectually, which he does very well at, as well as physically when he participates in, the battle at Blackwater, where you wouldn't expect him to do much of anything, and he tries to rally the troops. I don't think he's being self-serving in what he does there. He's genuinely wants to win that battle and make sure everyone doesn't get massacred.
When he gets married to Sansa, when he gets married to Sansa too, he's trying to protect her, and he doesn't have sex with her, even though he has every right to rape her if he wants to.
In that world, he does.
Yeah,
he has complete rights, but he does not go through with it, and she's prepared to submit because she understands that she's helpless here. And I do think, like, what he does there is entirely selfless, because no one would even know except them. So it isn't for public figure. It's not to look great. It is entirely because he believes it is wrong, which is just awesome. Especially if, as a guy, we understand
he's also
that.
empathizing, right?
Yep. Yeah, he is.
Massive.
He's also, like, deeply empathizing with Sansa. Like, I see him as thinking of what kind of position he's thinking of her position, and she's also, I think he has internal dialogue about his ugliness, so he doesn't want to suffer that upon her, which I guess is noble, but it's also
that's high, Corey.
Yeah, it's also self-pitying,
It is. I think he's got some similarities to Glokta, right? He's intricate, he's clever, but the thing is, he is self-pitying. But what he does, and Glokta does a bit, but Tyrion does it masterfully. He uses humor, doesn't he? Deliberately.
Yeah.
And
that's one of my favorite aspects of his character. He's funny.
And he never shies away from it. He draws attention to it. He's like, yep, bastard dwarf right here. He's not a bastard dwarf, but he's treated like one. And he's like, yep, kill my mum, demon child, and all this stuff. And he totally acknowledged it. Like, I'm weak, I'm feeble, I can't do anything. And he uses the sarcasm to cut. I think, like Glokta, though, he has every reason for how screwed up he is. Every reason. Like, his father has so much to answer for. Even Jaime has something to answer for. Cersei has something to answer for in the way that Tyrion has become. And actually, even Robert has something to answer for. His whole family have screwed him over. Jaime the least, but even Jaime. And so it's amazing to see what Tyrion does with that. He does many, many selfless things, in my view. And he is selfish, but so is the rest of the planet. But he is proactive regularly, like he actively makes decisions all the freaking time. Some of them are outright selfish, but most of them, not even just a few, most of them are positive decisions. He is one of the most morally trying to do the right thing of anyone in Game of Thrones. And he is also, he doesn't hide from the crap he does do. Like, he admits it. He's like, yep, I go out whoring. I totally do that. I own it. I'm not pretending to be morally good and then doing it in secret. I am that guy. Do I get drunk? Heck yeah. I love getting drunk. And like, do I lie? Yeah, I lie. And I lie better than anybody else. He's all of those things. He's quite happy to be like, hey, I'll be a coward. Let's get this guy fighting instead. But I love the fact he owns it. He owns it. Even his dishonesty is honest. And like the way he treats Jon, the way he treats all the other people who get treated like crap, like Jon Snow, the way he treats Sansa, the way he even treats Joffrey. He tries to save frickin' Joffrey.
Yeah.
And like Joffrey just doesn't deserve him at all.
No, because Joffrey completely humiliates him in public.
And back at the beginning of the story too, when Catelyn blames him for, I think it's for killing one of her sons, right?
Yeah, well,
he doesn't try to get revenge on her for that.
Ah, my goodness, Catelyn Stark. Anyway, but I think she's a good character that I wouldn't call a hero, but I can't call her a hero because she just drives me nuts. But I think Tyrion Lannister, for the reasons that we have stated, and remember, I've only read the books, so nothing from future series, please. But from the 5 books and everything he tries to do in those, even when he goes over the sea and he's a slave, the way he reacts, how he tries to treat the other slaves, even what he eventually tries to do for Daenerys and for the Hidden Prince, all of it. Yes, he's looking out for himself, but I think he also does a lot of things that he could be far worse with and shows some real nobility. Even with frickin' Jorah Mormont, right? There's some moments there where Tyrion could really screw him over and chooses not to. And he does that again and again and again. And like the times when he does screw people over, it's usually because they've given him pretty much no choice. Like Catelyn Stark puts him in a position where he has to go against her. Joffrey puts him in a position where he has to go against him. Cersei puts him in a position where he has to go against her. His father really brings about his own death. And I don't blame Tyrion for that.
I don't blame him for killing his own father, if that's what you were about to say.
It is. I understand why Tyrion. I don't think murder is ever right, but if there ever is Tyrion almost had the right to pull that trigger, and his father
was deliberately trying to get Tyrion killed during the trial,
and
whatever it took, he wanted Tyrion to die.
Yeah.
Because he didn't want Tyrion as an heir to anything. So he just kind of wanted to get rid of him. Even though, like, who else is going to be? It's the other shitty family members that he has. It's like that entire family just gets reduced to nothing as the series goes on.
Yeah, I know we're not here to discuss, like, alternates or anything, but my goodness, I would love to see some short fan fiction of what if Lady Jenna lives, you know? And just maybe Tyrion Lannister doesn't become like a complete git. And just because it seems, I mean, it's probably not true because it's in Game of Thrones, so she was probably evil as well. We just didn't get to see it. And because we only ever hear about her from her children and her husband, who all idolized her. She was probably a selfish Lannister, but we don't know that. But if she was this lovely woman who made, Lannister smile and who truly valued her children and would have maybe loved Tyrion despite his imperfections, the difference that those people could have been. And if they, you spend a lot of the things going, look, if you Starks and you Lannisters could just get along, we'd have a good life here. But of course, then there'd be no story. But anyway, just throwing that out there as a tangent, because I felt in the need for another tangent.
No, that's a good point. Yeah.
Tyrion Lannister. Right, let's hero. We all agreed then. Tyrion Lannister, hero.
Tyrion is a hero.
Yeah.
Yes, we agree.
Hero.
Yes. All right, let's move on to Dusty. Did you want to talk about Harry Dresden without revealing any spoilers, or do you want to skip him?
I think it's too difficult. Yeah.
Too difficult to avoid spoilers? Okay.
Would you still say Harry's got to be a hero, right? Even though I've not read the books.
I would say yes, because he's a hero because he constantly sacrifices he doesn't lose his life, but he's constantly sacrificing it for the good of others. Yeah, he's gray sometimes, and sometimes he succumbs to like his anger and things like that. But generally, he's always sacrificing. He's always trying to protect everybody, so much so that he doesn't tell people what's going on in order to protect them. He makes sure like a lot of his friends aren't getting involved when he thinks that they can't take on the threat that they're about to approach. Like he does this constantly with the werewolves, like in the beginning of the books. He does this constantly with Murphy. Like in the very beginning of the books, he's constantly trying to do everything by himself. And then that kind of just morphs into he starts to rely on his friends more. And then, but yeah, there's some things that he does I think some people would have a problem with. These things definitely shape his character. But yeah, I would say generally he's a good guy and he's a hero.
Yeah.
I would say that aspect of his character too, of him trying to do everything himself for a while and eventually accepting that he has allies and he should accept that they are willing to make those sacrifices for him and he needs their help. I found that aspect of his character to be really similar to Rand al'Thor in Wheel of Time.
Yeah. And I think from what you've described there, Dusty, like heroes don't have to make 100% good decisions because that is completely unrealistic. I think it's good that this character makes some poor decisions, but he sounds super proactive and he sounds like he constantly is trying to do the right thing, even if sometimes his decisions are not good. And that just makes him more relatable and in a way a greater hero because, you know, it says like you can't show courage until you've felt fear. And you can't be noble until you've, felt something ignoble. You know, turning down temptation can only work if you're actually tempted. You know, it's very easy to lie down in the wind. You only know its strength when you push against it, and that's what it sounds like Harry Dresden's doing the entire time.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
But anyway, I'll read those because I've heard they're pretty freaking good.
They're pretty freaking good. Yeah,
they're amazing.
They're amazing. Yeah.
It starts off a little slow. But then they really pick up. And
Dude, they start. I read the Wheel of Time and didn't find there to be a slog. I'm not worried about flow.
Oh, and like with each, it's almost like with each book, the character development and world building and complex aspects of the plot to just increase so much with each book.
Yeah, cool. So what we got next?
All right, let me see here. So
let's get back to something I know.
Let me see. Oh yeah, Kelsier.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Kelsier. So Brandon Sanderson, we're finally with the GOAT.
Yes.
Oh, great. So what do you guys think? Is Kelsier a hero?
Yes, I think he is a hero.
He makes the ultimate sacrifice.
He does.
And he's always trying to do the right thing, even though, especially in the first Mistborn novel, as we talked about recently, he's totally okay with killing people because he considers them, just working with the bad guys, so they're just as bad. And then he eventually somewhat changes his mind about that, but not before he's killed, basically. But killed doing the right thing.
Yeah, well,
he started to. He spared Elend.
That's true.
He was on this total, all nobles are bad. And because he knew that Vin was in love with Elend, he actively protected and helped him during that battle.
Yeah, for sure.
Vin is the catalyst. Vin is the catalyst to saving Kelsier.
Which is funny because Vin doesn't trust anybody.
Yeah.
So it's such a weird catalyst that would engender trust between him and Elend. But I also think when he sees Elend, he sees that Elend is a person that's willing to protect Vin because that's what was happening at that moment. He was going there trying to protect Lord Renew, who was about to get killed, and I think at that point he just knew he had to keep this guy around because if I'm going to make the ultimate sacrifice, I need to have someone here that's going to fight for Vin through thick and thin. So,
Yeah. Kelsier is definitely a hero who does morally dark stuff. He is and the thing I think about Kelsier is I absolutely agree that in a different story, Kelsier is the villain. If
it was a story from the perspective of the nobles, for sure.
But yeah, even if it was like our own country, right? You know, or like in the States or wherever, he'd be like someone trying to overthrow the government. Like, you know, normally those people typically not good for the majority of people, unless you're in like an evil despotic dictatorship. Then maybe you need someone to have a revolution, and so like it's like literally the Lord Ruler is unassailable. He's not only the parliament, he's the judges, he's the courts. There is no check on him. There is no balance. There's no way to unseat him. There's no way to stop him. He is committing a genocide. He has breeding programs. He is also virtually indestructible, and he's also God. So even theologically, you can't depose this guy. He controls the money. He controls the religion. He controls the education. So, like Kelsier, if he was a reasonable person, would have already given up. It is exactly because he has villainous attributes that he is prepared to take on someone like the Lord Ruler. But
it's the mental instability that gives him that ability, you know.
Yeah, agree.
He can't think that anything he's doing is rational, but he goes through with it anyway.
But I do genuinely agree with you, Dusty, that his actual motivations are not for his own glory. He isn't trying to set himself up as the new king, or like he is trying to set himself up as a new god, but only to undermine the Lord Ruler. He doesn't actually care. He doesn't actually care about like him being the king or the ruler or the god. He just wants to bring a change, a freedom, and he likes to win. He loves to win, and I do rate him. I think some of the ways that we can be sure that he is a hero is the way he treats Vin. I think the way he treats Vin proves his heroic mettle. He doesn't always go about things the right way, but if he was entirely selfish, there's no way that he would treat Vin the way he does, the way he nurtures her, the way he teaches her that you can trust people even when they betray you. I think that's an amazing concept to share. And like I know that it's kind of hinted that Mare probably didn't betray him, or maybe she didn't. But
Vin suggests that, right?
Yeah, because they figure out that there's a way for them to break copper clouds, etc. So they could have known his plans. It doesn't necessarily mean she had to have betrayed him. But one of the things I like is that she could have. He assumed for many years she did, and yet Kelsier did not condemn her. And I think that shows an amazing ability. It's something that I like to practice in my own life. I find that holding grudges is very rarely useful. And one of the things I've noticed is that sometimes forgiving people has ended up with me being stabbed twice. But in many, many cases, it's ended up with a much better relationship. And there's some people I am friends with who have no other friends now, because unfortunately, because of their actions, they've burned those bridges. But I don't regret it. And actually, I think it's one of the characteristics in my life that I've most enjoyed developing. And I think Kelsier, for all his screwed upness, has that in spades, because he hasn't just been like screwed over in a mild way. He's been basically sold out for slavery and death, and he can still love this woman. And I think that's a powerful statement. And Vin won't trust anybody, and it's Kelsier, this hardened, selfish, like murderer, who actually gets her to open up and trust people. And at the same time, she softens his view on nobles, allowing him to become the hero that he ends up being as he develops. I think they're really good examples of great character development from Sanderson. And I definitely think that Kelsier is a bad guy who is definitely a hero.
Well said. I totally agree with everything you just said there.
Yeah.
Wow. Great character.
There's some super gray ones too, and some other books that he's written. Like, I'm just thinking about Warbreaker, and Like the god guy who's like totally flippant about everything.
Yeah. Light song. The light song
there
is
you
a
go.
delight. Don't rag on my light song. Light song is a
It's just like
delight.
comedic.
He
He's
is.
joking around with everything.
He's a bit Tyrion Lannister, except he's perfect.
Yeah, he's definitely there. And then
But that sort of mockery, and there's just some lines, and you're just like, did you just say that?
Yeah.
It's like, I don't believe in myself. I have a religion worshiping me. I think it's a false religion.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that where he's trying to persuade his own priest to stop believing in him. I just think that's hilarious.
Yeah.
I sometimes think like if I was a god, I'd be like, I feel a bit that way. Like I'm a bit sheepish about the fact I'm God.
Yeah.
Anyway, what do we got next, man?
All right. Yeah. The next one, another Brandon Sanderson Mistborn character, the Lord Ruler.
Okay. Tell us, what do you think?
Oh,
hell
yeah.
no.
I think it, like, to me, he does classify as a villain. I know I like the twist at the end of the first book where it turns out that the Lord Ruler is different from who he thought he was. But even in spite of that, I still think he qualifies as a villain because, like, he took place as like a god and ruler and is like has this world with slavery and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah. What do you think, Dusty?
Well, one, he totally screwed the world up.
By accident.
By accident. Yeah, he didn't know what the hell he was doing. Two, his very motivation for gaining the power was of ill intent.
Yeah, selfish.
He wanted it for himself, and he couldn't come to terms that it's kind of described as that they were oppressing them at the moment.
Yep.
In that day and age.
They were conquering.
And then the prophecy that described what was happening, he just couldn't believe it, that it was an outsider coming in to be the prophesied Messiah.
Yeah.
And he just couldn't handle it. And then he created this completely messed up society from then on.
Yeah.
And none of his motivations, I guess his motivations for keeping the society the way it was were kind of to maintain a status quo, and he couldn't figure out any other way to do it. But it wasn't good. And he completely enriched himself throughout the whole process. So I don't think he's a hero at all. He's definitely a classic villain type.
I think this is the first time I've come close to calling someone a hero that you guys aren't.
Interesting.
Because, right, the Lord Ruler, I agree. I cannot argue with what has been said, right? What has been said is correct. But the thing about Lord Ruler is that Sanderson was just so clever. And, he is a classic villain at first. But then he pulls back one curtain, and he seems to be this sort of bored emperor. He's not actually doing anything to oppress anybody. He's just leaving that to, like, the Inquisitors. But he did make the Inquisitors, so you're like, he must be pretty bad, right? But he doesn't seem to really be doing anything himself that's really negative. And then, like, Kelsier jumps out, like, spearing him, and he's just like, yeah, I don't even care. But then he's like, oh, he was a terroristman? Maybe he was part of the oppressed people. And we start realizing that the journals and stuff and how that what that shows about who he really was and what he could have been. And then he dies. So you're like, oh, that's over. Oh, no, that's no either. Near over. And then what we find out in future books is that he had like a Gollum-like impact. That if the right guy, if the Frodo of the story had got the power, the real bad guy would be out. And
that's a good point.
And it's not just like the Lord Ruler is like a nasty dictator. Ruin is like world-ending apocalypse. This is like Hitler and Satan, if you believe in like the apocalypse idea that he will come back and destroy the world. And so the thing is that accidentally or not, his selfishness, him taking the ring the power for himself, saves the world. If it not for him, Vin is never born, Kelsier's never born, no one's born because the world's already dead. And so I think his flaw is selfishness and preservation, that he held the power of preservation and just wanted to keep everything. You said the status quo. He was too static. He's just like, I'll set up a perfect thing and then it can't move. And his unwillingness to be flexible made him make poor decisions that ended up costing him. I see that maybe he isn't heroic. He isn't a hero. I would say, though, that he is a character who has made heroic actions. And his preparation for the end of the world, his determination to try and retake the power to stop ruin destroying the world, not for his own gain at that point, but to actually just prevent and block ruin, is very impressive. And
I think he became really, by the time we get into his era in the story, he's completely complacent by that point in time.
But he's still intending to wait out the well. He knows it's about to be gathered, and he's like, I will take it again. And he says to them, you don't know what I do for you, right? He says, you don't know what I'm doing for you. I'm like saving you from something you have no clue. And we think the world's bad in book 1. But if you read about the world in book 3, you're like, holy moly, Sanderson, this is way worse. This is
like the touch of the Dark One on the world.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's like this world just got a bit rubbish. You know, this is worse than Chicago. And anyway, sorry.
Especially Chicago and Dresden Files, right, Dusty?
Yeah. Towards the end of the series, it gets pretty bad.
Anyone who writes about Chicago always seems to write about it as a place of anguish and pain, but still awesome, so you should live there. It's like,
well, it depends on what part of Chicago, because there's Lakeshore Drive where all the rich people live, and then there's the South Side where all the poor people live.
I don't know. I only know it vicariously via books, but all I know is that people love to write about Chicago, so it's obviously one of those cities. But so yeah, okay, not a hero, but I think he took some really heroic actions.
Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't really considered that to that extent before, but yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Anyway, I'm glad we discussed it, though. I think it's really interesting to see your points of view.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to the next character here. I think we've only got a few left here or so. Yeah, so these are the next ones. We could talk about both of them
together
after the other because they're in the same universe. The characters that you suggested from the Wheel of Time, Tristram, Verin and Logain.
Okay. So I want to start with Verin, right? Again, guys, if you haven't realized that, those of you who are listening, that we're like spoiling everything, you should have realized that by now. But this is one of the most cool things in all of Wheel of Time. So if you're going to read Wheel of Time and you haven't read it yet, don't listen to this. Because one of the greatest of all reveals. Verin is this happy old lady. Yeah, she's one of the magic users, which is cool. But she is clearly shown as like a studier, like a really background character. She's a little bit nice, but kind of like maybe a mischievous old woman with a glint in her eye. And like a bit bookish, a little bit out there, but a clearly tertiary character, not even a secondary character. And she keeps showing up in all the books. But he does that with loads of characters, so it's hard to tell how important Verin's going to be. And then, in a single chapter, we've been getting hints that Verin might be bad. Okay? Been getting hints in a few things that she's done. She's shown that she's prepared to use the power to control people's minds. That is like really dark side in Wheel of Time. I guess in most things, but in Wheel of Time, very much so. And we think we might have caught her in a lie. And we've been taught that any of these women who lie must be completely evil, right? So as a theorizer, as one of the people reading these books back when they were originally written, when we didn't know the ending, I started to think that Verin was going to be one of the many Dark Sisters. And there's many. There's not just one.
Good prediction.
And, well, we started to think that, but that's not. I didn't come up with that. That was just the theory guys were going, ooh, I think this is a lie. And the way she uses compulsion, we're like, ooh, that looks like it. And so I was like, oh, that's really convincing. Yeah, yeah. And like,
You mean like from the second book when she used it?
And in book 6, book 7, after Dumai Wells, she goes in and pushes all the sisters till they swear to Rand, the ones who are against him. And some of that looks a bit dodgy, yeah? Like what Leandrin does when she uses her. Like, this kind of compulsion that people can get away with. But anyway, we were theorizing, like, she's going to be bad. She's going to be bad. And then, in one sublime move, he shares a chapter, Tea with Verin, and it's one of my top 10 chapters of all of the Wheel of Time. It is one of my pinnacle moments of the series, and Jordan just showed me what a masterful writer he was. And I think Sanderson did the chapter justice, but obviously that planned move would never have paid off if it wasn't for Jordan's vision. And just when she explains that she is the spy within, when she explains how she manipulated the promises that you have to make to the Dark One and found a loophole through which she could destroy the very thing she was in, but not for herself. She could save the world, but not for her. She could save it for everybody else, but to do so, she had to die. She knew that she would not be able to do it until the hour of her death. And then she uses the exact wording of that to get out of it by, in the last hour of her death, betraying the Dark One, revealing all the secrets, and allowing Egwene, the true hero, to cleanse the tower and to save the Aes Sedai. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it because she does so much wrong. I love it because she is a spy from within. I love it that she is had to do dark and horrible things, but from the very beginning, before she even got sucked in, she went in knowing that. She didn't go in evil and then turn good. She was always good, but she was prepared to do what was necessary to take them down. And it took someone who was prepared to do some pretty evil stuff in order to defeat true evil. And I just think it's noble. I think it's amazing. I think it's glorious. And I think the fact that it was handled on a wording technicality is so Aes Sedai that I'm just like, Jordan, you magnificent bar steward. You know, you got me. And so in my opinion, though Verin Mathwin does evil actions, and several of them as revealed, I think she is an out-and-out hero.
Yeah, I agree. Good assessment. She ends up being like a triple agent in the way that you described, right?
Yeah, because she's so freaking clever about it.
Yeah. What do you think,
I agree.
Dusty? Yeah.
Well, she meets the basic criteria, which is she makes the ultimate sacrifice.
Yeah.
So since she's able to make that basic criteria, for me, of course, she is a hero, because it wasn't so that, I know I'm going to die, so I'm going to disclose all this. She chose to kill herself. She did not say, I'm mortally wounded, now let me spill my guts on everything. No, she went and poisoned herself, knowing it would take an hour for the poison to kill her, so that she could disclose all of the members of the Black Ajah. So it wasn't a convenient thing that she did.
No.
I'm going to die anyway, let me spill my guts. No, she chose to die because she knew at that moment she needed to make sure that that information got out so that she could save the light side, the side of the light. So, yeah, definitely a hero.
Yeah, and planning all those years to do exactly that. Like, she is planning to do that sacrifice for, I don't know, 80 years. I don't know how long it is. It's a long time. She's an old woman and she's Aes Sedai. I can't remember exactly how long time. And all that time she's gathering that information, knowing that if that's revealed, she's done for. Brilliant. What a great example of the double agent trope, just done magnificently. Jordan, you're a star.
Yes, definitely.
Throwing it up there, big guy. Throwing it up there.
Definitely.
All
right, let's get into Logain.
This time I'll let you guys go. You tell me what you think, because I blabbed on.
I don't know, man. Like, Logain is a tough one. I guess, like, obviously he started off as kind of a and he was like at the start of the books, he's a bad guy. Then he's kind of forced into being a good guy for a while, and he gets. I forget whether he in Lord of Chaos. I forget. Does he get
He gets boosted out of jail, so
that's when he gets reconnected to the power.
Right. So he escapes. Yeah. Okay.
And then
with assistance.
Yeah. So I don't know. Like I think he's kind of more of a bad guy overall.
Okay.
Yeah. I
what
don't know.
What makes
I don't
you think
think he's bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's because you're not remembering like the further books where he saves the Black Tower from evil. Like I think that's probably one of his greatest accomplishments. Because Taim is going to turn the Black Tower evil, and it takes an extraordinary long time for Taim to try to convert Logain because he has a very strong will. And you could see that the others who are still good in the tower look to Logain at that moment to lead them out.
Yep.
And I don't think Logain is taking over the tower, or at least trying to eliminate Taim as a selfish act. I think he really does like his fellow Ashaman. And he does have, and he gets really upset when he finds out that like his people are getting turned to evil. And I think in the beginning he's in survival mode, so of course he's going to be pretty self-serving, especially after escaping. And we do see a little bit of the redemption where he actually goes back and helps Swan, and because Swan and
Leanne.
What's the keeper? Yeah, Leanne thought they had been abandoned. Like men thought they had been abandoned by Logain, and he actually goes up and he gets them back. So I think at that point, that's the point where I said, okay, he has some redemption here. He's not just some asshole that's just doing his own thing. And he goes back to them with Saladar. I know the promise from Swan is to get back at the Reds for doing them dirty.
Yeah.
But eventually, I think with Min's viewing, and her viewing was that he would see glory once again.
Yes.
I think that just kind of cements that he is ultimately a good character, and he starts off rough for sure. But he ends up being a more redeemed character, and he actually puts himself on the line to try to save the Black Tower.
Yeah. Well said. You guys reminded me of crucial details that convinced me. You're right. I think you're right. Yeah, he does ultimately get redeemed.
He does. And one of the things I just want to say, one of the reasons I brought Logain up is that Logain and Taim are the two false dragons that we get to see, right? Like, so there's Rand and then there's these two, and deliberately Jordan takes them in opposite directions. Taim is never arrested. The first time he properly shows up, he's immediately into the Black Tower and then immediately to the leadership of it. Logain is captured. He's gentled. He looks like he's got nothing left. Many people go insane or just or let themselves die. When the tower is betrayed and all the people we thought were loyal and good, the Aes Sedai, or like turn out to be, loads of them turn out to be evil. I'm like, oh no, he is the one, as Dusty says, even though he has no powers, saves or sides with Swan and Leanne. And then later on, when he's reconnected and we begin to see, oh, what's going to happen now? And he's given his freedom. How does he use that freedom? He doesn't just leg it and disappear. He doesn't go and sell his skills to the Shanshan. He doesn't fall to the Dark One. He doesn't even try and undermine Rand, which I think is really impressive because he totally could have, because Rand does not treat the Dark Tower well. He sets it up and then ignores the heck out of it, and kind of almost deserves the betrayal he gets from that area because he just literally ignores it. But But I really liked what Dusty said, and that Logain becomes a lodestone for the loyalists. And without him, there would have been no one for them to shelter under, because he kind of offers his protection to those. And that is why there is a loyalist Dark Tower to fight on the side of light come the final battle. And he also does get involved in some of the big final fights. I know that's not vital, but I have a lot of love for Logain. And one of the things I think, one of the reasons I wanted to bring him up in this chat is you may be aware, I know we are aware, and this our listeners also may be aware that there's going to be a new high budget Wheel of Time series with Amazon. And the showrunner, Eric Jenkins, has said that Logain is one of his favorite characters, and he will be
cool.
He will be widely expanding Logain's role in the series. So I think we might see a lot more Logain stuff. I think we might see him being a false dragon, for example, a little bit. And I think his like capture, imprisonment, and gentling, and then redemption, and all that. I think when he's squishing things, I think we might find that the Logain stuff is stuff he doesn't cut out, and I think we might see Logain as really brought up as a could he be the dragon? You know, could he?
Oh yeah, that could be interesting.
Because they're going to play on that for people who aren't familiar with the series. That's for sure.
Yeah.
If Game of Thrones is anything to go by, right? If this does anything like that, hundreds, thousands of people will watch the show who will never read the books. Because I know loads of people who'll pick up a good fantasy show who won't read a 900-page book, and when they hear there's 14 of them, they'll just run a mile.
Yeah.
But they'll watch this show. Just like loads of people have read Lord of the Rings, far, far more watch those movies. And so I think that he could really play that and have that be a really engaging character arc for that huge audience, potentially, that haven't read the books. I genuinely think that. So that's one of the reasons I wanted to bring Logain up, because I think he'll be a very interesting character in this series. Really interested to see where they take it. And they're bound to change some stuff.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I think we might see Logain character in the show take some of the roles of other characters from the books. Like maybe people like Uno or Angtar or you know, just some of those characters who do something important, but maybe only one important thing. It's like, let's slide that over.
There are so many characters that it would make sense to combine some of them for time's sake.
They've got to in the show. There's no doubt. And I think that because he likes Logain, I think he's hinting to us that's going to happen. I'm gonna shove some of these other minor characters, and I'm just gonna put them in Logain. That's my prediction. Anyway, Logain is a hero in my view. He is a protagonist. He does things of his own free will and choice, and several of them are selfless and good actions. And a lot of his worst things, I think, like Dusty said, out of self-preservation and circumstance, not because he was just an evil git. I don't believe he was. I don't think he ever was.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I would say you guys convinced me on that one. Yeah. And you reminded me of some things that I forgot about too. All right, let's talk about. Oh, okay. This is a good one to end with. Darth Vader. Do we think Darth Vader is a hero or a villain? I think it's hard to say, because he started off as a hero, then he became a villain, then he kind of ultimately gets redeemed by sacrificing himself to save Luke and trying to kill the Emperor. But that's hard to say.
But that's deathbed repentance, isn't it? Like,
it is. That's
he was
true.
being evil till like 5 minutes before death.
Yeah.
So it's like, does that count? After you've tried to do everything you can to screw your son up and pull him over to evil, everything you can, you've tried to like almost kill him, and then only at the last freaking moment you go, you know what? No. I mean, it's still great, and I think he's a great character. Dusty, what's your view? Is it enough? Is it enough to redeem him? Oh, no, he's busy.
Oh, you still there, Dusty? Yeah, I don't.
Be working.
I don't know.
Have you watched? Sorry, have you watched the Clone Wars show?
I was
No,
muted.
no, I haven't. Oh, okay.
Oh, welcome back, Dusty. Tell us what you think of Anakin Skywalker, dude.
No. Like, if you're looking through a lot of the setup of the character, his downfall to evil is because he's selfish. And I even think the motivation for killing the Emperor is selfish also. Because,
yeah?
Because it's my son. It's not to save the world. It's not to save the universe. It's like, that's my boy.
Okay.
I think if it wasn't his son, he wouldn't have done that.
Yeah, that might be the case.
And I think there's always a selfish
side.
I always think protecting any of your offspring is ultimately protection of your legacy. So
okay.
I wouldn't consider that specifically heroic.
Okay.
That's just my opinion.
No. You're
so they didn't really have a relationship.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you you guys about Darth Vader too. Like he's just so like earlier on, obviously when he's just Anakin Skywalker, he's a good guy, but then he becomes a bad guy, and he's a bad guy for like decades, for probably the majority of his life, I would say. So
and he's a badass bad guy as well, right?
Yes.
You know, like he didn't just like kill a couple of guys one time. Like he's like the Emperor's right hand, and he deliberately led the hunt against the Jedi. The Jedi are hunted down and destroyed by him and his cohorts, but him leading, and he has some great badass moments while doing that. I remember once the Jedi like do a trap for him, and they all like get around him. He's like, and they're like, "We've got you surrounded." He's like, "I'm surrounded by fear and dead men," and you're like, "Oh crap!" And then he just kills them all because he's freaking Darth Vader. Conceived by the midichlorians. Anyway. But then, like the destruction of Alderaan, right? He is entirely complicit in the destruction of that entire planet. Like he agreed to the torture of his daughter, you know, all of these things. He didn't know she was his daughter at the time. There's still no excuse, you know, taking in a political prisoner and submitting to torture. He's murdered children. He's turned on the very organization he swore to uphold. He's done a lot of bad stuff. He does do the ultimate good thing at the end. He does. He is the Gollum, right? He does something that without it, the whole thing falls apart. And what he does is crucial. I do believe that people can be redeemed, but I don't think he's a hero. I think he's a villain who is
in the way that he ultimately ends up redeeming himself too. I think like in terms of the mission, it's a little more indirect than what Gollum does. Like Gollum destroys the ring. He's not like saving Frodo so that he can save the ring, which I think would probably be the same dynamic if we were to make a direct comparison.
I actually think what Darth Vader does is a bit better, because Gollum tries to take the ring. That's what he does, and to do so, he attacks Frodo. Vader tries to save Luke, but Vader literally picks up the Emperor and kills him. Does so on purpose, and not to get the Emperor's power, to save Luke, and dies in the process. Again, not necessarily on purpose. I'm sure if he'd lived, he would have been like, "Get in, I'm alive." Just like I don't think Gollum intended to die either by like leaping into the chasm. But do I think he's redeemed? Yes. Do I think he's a hero? No. I think you would have to be more proactively righteous. And I think Dusty's point that I hadn't really considered, that the fact that his reason for his fall is, I want my wife to not die. And his reason for his redemption, I want my son to not die. Even though those are selfless in a way, they're also kind of selfish. And so I see what you're saying there, Dusty, that his attachments are his weakness, but only because he makes them so. by his obsession over having what he wants. But I take your
One
point
thing
as well.
I'll note too is that his way of killing the Emperor is actually the way of the Sith. So he didn't really deviate outside of the evil ideology, because the apprentice is always there to kill the master.
Yeah.
And if Luke killed the Emperor, then he couldn't take that mantle. So I don't know. There's probably some ambiguous stuff there that perhaps if he had survived. Yeah, what would have Vader done if he had survived? I don't think he would have just became a good guy.
All I'm saying is, can you imagine him going down to Endor and like walking in on that party? Awkward. He's like, hey, didn't you like torture me like just 2 years ago? And he's like, yeah, sorry about that. I'm now good. Didn't you like kill my entire home planet?
I don't even think Vader even expected to die. So
no, I don't think he knew he was going to die.
I don't think so either.
Yeah, but, so because I don't think even if he survived, if he would have just flipped to be a good guy, I still think he would have held on to that power.
Yeah, I don't know if people could have accepted if he had changed. Like, I really don't. Like Luke did, but Luke's special case, right?
Yeah,
like he can feel the Force. He has that personal relationship. But that idea, and like, I know it's all gone now, but the expanded universe was really cool back when it existed. And
it technically still exists. It's just not canon.
Yeah.
My favorite part of the universe was the Knights of the Old Republic RPG games. I loved those.
They were good games. Those were good games. But the reason I bring that up is because the fall of the Empire has not been done well in canon, unfortunately. Like they have like the Emperor having set up like doomsday devices to bomb his own planets and stuff, which is just stupid. But in the original version, the Empire took a long time to break apart and fall to pieces. Like just destroying one battle station and killing the boss doesn't rip up a galactic empire. And so it begins to fall, and it's an ongoing process. But one of the things that's cool is that Leia struggles for years to deal with the concept that Vader was her father. She doesn't just forgive him. She doesn't just accept that he's now a redeemed character. She does not. She hates the legacy of him. She despises who he was. And I found that so freaking realistic. Because that's how I always kind of like, so you do one good thing at the end of your life and then you get the same ending as Obi-Wan? Where is the fairness in that, bro?
Yeah.
Because like I don't think that's the way things should work. But I do believe in forgiveness and I do believe in redemption. So it's interesting because it is a clash in my own heart about where does the line lie. And so I would say not a hero, but capable of heroic acts, both before his fall and in his redemption at the end. Though he is definitely not a hero in my view, because his villainy, which I don't think it was forced, he chose to do what he did. And like, yeah, the Emperor tempted him, but everyone's tempted and not everyone falls.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well said. I agree.
Okay.
So I think we agree that it sounds like we agree about every single character except Gollum.
Well, yeah, and there's been a little bit of variation within. Some of us think people are closer on one end or not. Like I don't think Logan is really a hero. Logen Ninefingers.
Oh yeah, we disagreed about that one too.
But only mildly. But only mildly. I think you've got a lot more grounds for calling that guy a hero. I'm more, but I also think it's difficult because for you, it's very broad.
Yes.
What that means. And so I guess that's the difference really between us. It's not right and wrong in this case. It's not that simple. It's more about definitions of what is heroism. And that's why, I think that'd be really interesting in the comments if people comment on this, is like what they would put as their definition, what they would consider.
Yeah. Everyone who's watching this, go ahead and let us know your thoughts in the comments, because that's one of the reasons that I wanted to talk about this. It's so fun to talk about the associated philosophical and moral issues to do with what makes a hero and what makes a bad guy in fiction. And because these are all like subjective points of view, because we're talking about fiction, so it's really fun to discuss.
Yeah, and like you say, it's fiction parallels reality. And, you know, there's so many people in our own history, like my degree before I did what I do now, my university degree is in military history. That's what I studied. Cool. And so if you look at people like Churchill and Bismarck, who are like icons in Germany and in England, they have sordid pasts, right? As does almost everyone. And so people can look at them and say, I thought you were a hero, but you do this. And the point is that you can do a few important actions and be considered a hero for that, even if some of your other actions are more ambiguous. If you go to South Africa and talk about someone who's incredibly heroic, Nelson Mandela is seen as an absolute icon. And I believe that Nelson Mandela is a hero for what he did. But if you look at all of Nelson Mandela's actions, like every other human being on the planet, there's some pretty sketchy stuff in there. Some stuff that borders on terrorism and revolutionary activity, right?
Yeah. But have you read his autobiography? It's really interesting. Yeah, I've read it too. Yeah.
And what I'm saying is, I'm not saying he's not a hero. The guy's a hero, but I'm just saying that we often see in real life this ambiguity, and that's why I love it that an author or a filmmaker, someone who's writing a story, shows that yes, my heroes, they have some dodgy bits to them, and even my villains, they're not just evil. There is redemptive arcs in them. Even villains care about their kids, kind of thing, and so I think that's really, really valuable. And also that there's some people like Tyrion Lannister, right, who are sarcastic, mean, selfish little gits, but who actually are truly heroic. I think that's true of real life too, right? There's some people out there, you're a snarky little git, aren't you? But actually what they're doing, they're trying to do something really good. And you don't know that because you only know them at work where they're a jerk. And yet actually at home, they're causing great things to happen and they've lived a really hard life. And I think that's why I love fiction, Andrew. It just really opens my brain to like people who are so different from me. Like you guys live very different lives from me. And yet, so it's really cool to open my brain a little bit and go, oh, people can live very differently from the way I live in my own little moral world and still be heroic and still be noble and still be powerful and important. And that's a really good message to get out there.
Yeah, well said. I totally agree. Yeah. All right. Well, I know you probably have to get going there, Tristram. So
it's 3 a.m. I'm going to go to sleep. But thanks for having this conversation. What a great idea this was, Andrew. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, no problem, man. Yeah, it was
great discussion.
This was just as much fun as I expected. And so do you guys want to get together again in, I'd say, I'll let you know when I have a better idea, but sometime in like 2 to 4 weeks to talk about Well of Ascension?
Yeah.
Sure, just let me know, because I gotta get that book like a week in advance.
Cool.
Is that, you just blitzed through it in a week? Oh my goodness. I'm reading Rhythm of War right now, and I'm loving it, but I am not reading it like in a week. My goodness, you're a machine, Dusty. You're a machine.
Yeah, I'd read it in a week too. Yeah.
You guys are crazy.
Because I'm listening to it, so it takes about that long for me to do an audiobook listen.
I'm slow, but I love it. Anyway, at some point, yes, Well of Ascension next then, okay?
Yes. All right. All right.
Ciao.
Thanks for joining, man.
Bye.
All right. I'll just say all the stuff I like to say at the end of my videos here. So, thanks to everyone for watching this. Thanks to those of you who subscribe to the channel. Please subscribe if you're watching this and haven't already done so. Also, thanks for clicking that bell to be notified when we put out more videos. Like we were just talking about, we'll be talking about Well of Ascension soon. And also a week from today, Dusty, Chris James, and perhaps also Shizen, aka Scazio, are going to talk about Snowpiercer. That movie directed by the guy who directed Parasite that won Academy Awards last year, and is also about class struggle, but takes place in sort of a speculative fiction / science fiction world. And got more videos planned too. Gonna do a theological debate about whether Protestantism supposedly destroyed or ruined Christianity at some time soon. And also next week or the week after that, read Nice Wonder from Mixed Mental Arts and his friend from Street Epistemology, Nathan, and I suggested that we talk about one of the SE or Street Epistemology conversations that Reed had and analyzed on the Street Epistemology channel about whether Nazis should be punched. And I suggested that we talk about that, and he suggested that we talk about this documentary called The Mighty Ira, who is a guy who is the former director of the ACLU who defended the free speech of Nazis in a town that had a lot of Holocaust survivors. So we're going to talk about that documentary also at some point next week or the week after that. So look forward to that. And I've got more Mindgasms Tremors coming up as well. And I'm also working on my next History of Sexuality vlog by Michelle Foucault. And this one will be interesting. It'll be about, great topics like anal sex and pedophiles and hermaphrodites and homosexuals and discourse, knowledge, and power. So that'll be interesting. And thanks especially to those of you who comment. Let us know your thoughts on the different heroes we discussed here and others if you want as well. And thanks especially to those of you who give me money on Patreon, which I always greatly appreciate. And I'll add the link in the description for this video for my Patreon page, as I always do. And also, like I always say, I love you all. Keep being the tiny beam of light that shines through the almost impenetrable darkness in the universe. And most importantly, always remember this: the funk cures all, and groove is in the heart. And read awesome fantasy books and think about the morality of different characters and what makes someone qualify as a hero. All right. Keep spreading mindgasms, love, funk, groove, and knowledge about awesome fantasy books everywhere. And anything else to say there before we end it, Dusty?
No, just join us next week at the Woke Centrist channel to discuss The Blood of Zeus, available right now on Netflix. So if you want to check it out before we spoilerize it next week, it is a very fun watch. But yeah, join us next week, and make sure you like and subscribe, and make sure you do that for Andrew's channel, and he has a Patreon. So if you want to support him, go ahead and check that out.
Yep, and do that also with Dusty's channel, Woke Centrist, which is where next Saturday we'll be talking about Blood of Zeus. Yeah. All right, thanks for talking as always, Dusty, and thanks again to everyone for watching, and adios until next time.